Disclaimer: the following video can contain spoilers. When Elly Conway, Bryce Dallas Howard, an author, is caught between two agencies who want her for her impeccable real-world story comparisons within her novels, she has to fight for her survival while altogether learning the truth about her series of novels.
B.S. Your friend? Looney Tunes!
Argylle is by far one of these movies that seems to never end. Not because of runtime, but because there's so many twists, turns, and reveals, you don't know where it ends. This, to me, ultimately ruined the movie's momentum. After the first three, the story gets convoluted and exaggerated. Like, there were so many cool ideas being thrown around in the writer's room that, instead of deciding which one route would provide the best outcome, they decided to include everything, smushing the story into something that, at the end, doesn't seem worthwhile. In short, it all goes downhill from the midpoint.
I mean it. Enough. You kill me, the division will never stop hunting you. Never.
For this video, let's see why including too many ideas can be a bad decision. In the hopes that this video stays at an acceptable length, I won't go over all the twists, turns, and reveals. Instead, I'll focus on two that I feel encapsulates what I'm trying to say.
What you're asking me to do takes months of research, years. Reading, interviewing, memorizing maps, getting to know a city. I've never even been to London before.
When Elly Conway first mentioned that writing takes months of research, I nodded in agreement. However, as the movie carries on, she continues to write, while mentioning some of the research she's done. But since it all happens off-screen, it comes across as just lazy writing. Because we never actually see her do research to give weight to those words.
I mean, I did do the research on it, but essentially, that's it.
And before you can say that including a scene of her doing research is just nonsensical filler or not needed, I want to clarify that this goes hand in hand with what I'll be discussing shortly. I'm merely using Elly's statement on research to segue onto what I want to discuss, so brace yourselves. I do want to make a slight correction to my words. I know I said two reveals, so let me clarify. I will talk about one reveal in two parts. This reveal is probably one of the biggest reveals the movie had to offer, because of how it changed the story. I hope I don't get in trouble for discussing it on YouTube, but I'll continue nevertheless. Up until the midpoint, we the audience are led to believe certain things in this universe. We understand Elly's character and her stance in the situation, but when reaching the midpoint, everything starts to crumble down. We are then thrust into this web of twists, turns, and reveals that turn the story upside down. So what we knew beforehand was a fib, a lie, that we begin to piece together the truth using these reveals. It had the possibility of being an entertaining journey, but in my opinion, failed because of the amount of twists, turns, and reveals it decided to include. For starters, let's take a look at who Elly was in the beginning. She's an author of a very popular series of novels known as Argylle. She gets caught up between two agencies because apparently her novels parallel real-world events. Okay, cool. That's easy to follow. But then, what I believe to be the midpoint, Elly visits her family after overhearing Aiden making a statement that she, Elly, needs a bullet in her head. Being afraid, she goes to the people she feels safe with. But lo and behold, it is revealed that her father is the man who's been chasing her, Ritter, Bryan Cranston. But it doesn't stop there. Her mother, Catherine O'Hara, turns out to be British and puts a gun to her head. And if you think that's where the twists, turns, and reveals end, you're mistaken. You see where I'm trying to get at, no? Okay, let me put it this way. Having a lot of twists, turns, and reveals is a bad thing, especially when it is done in this way, where the movie does not provide much indication or support before the reveals, because otherwise it'll ruin the reveal or whatnot. Therefore, when the reveal does happen, it feels like it comes out of left field. Not to mention that because we don't get any subtle hints beforehand, much of the information that would have been useful is given to us through dialogue.
Who are these people?
You see that guy right there? Goddamn fortune teller, Elly.
I mean, come on. Who am I, Aiden?
Well, once upon a time there was a...
As for how this affects a movie's structure, well, because the movie is turned upside down, it feels like the protagonist is a different character since the beginning. We begin a new plate and feels like we just started Act 1 and what we saw was just a prologue of events. Essentially what I'm saying is that Throughout the journey, the protagonist jumps over hurdles that would help spark a change within them, helping them in their spiritual goal. At least, that's how it is in the basic structure of a movie. But in this structure, I fail to grasp what the spiritual journey is. The spiritual journey in its simplest form is the why aspect of a movie. Why the movie was made, what the movie is about, the need our hero needs to learn to grow. But it feels like it's just missing in this movie, and therefore fails structurally because instead of continuing with the knowledge from the beginning, the story gets flipped on its head and gives us twists after turns after reveals, that the story feels like it's forced to continue without the spiritual side to it.
There's no one dancing. You're the only person dancing.
Therefore, when looking back at the timeline, knowing all the information, we can start to see the movie's flaws and plot holes, essentially seeing that the structure is weak. And if the structure is weak, the story is also weak.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
When we look back at the movie, we start to notice that in the end, these reveals aren't good. Why? Well, we have to see how these reveals were given to us. In other words, its delivery. Let's look at two examples. Elly being an agent means that she's capable of doing what she did 5 years prior, right? Well, it's possible but very far-fetched. How? Well, you mean to tell me that after not firing a gun for 5 years, she's capable of firing a gun through a 2-inch passageway near the heart just because she did the research? You know there's a difference between knowing and doing, right? And no. And just because she was an agent does not justify this action, because there was no prior evidence of both recollecting or relearning that would then support the claim of her being able to pull this off.
Then why are you still alive?
You purposely shot me through a 2-inch passageway in my chest after not firing a gun for 5 years based on an idea a fan sent in. Is that right?
Lastly, when Elly reads the master file and finds herself on it, only then do her memories begin to flow back. In a similar way to Kung Fu Panda 2, Elly fights her memories until she lets it flow and sees the truth. This scene was poorly executed because 1, we never saw her fight any memories up until this point. And no, it wasn't because of the master file, because this was said earlier.
You just come out and tell me.
We had to let your memories come back in their own time, naturally. Otherwise, you could lose everything that's buried in there for good.
We had to let your memories come back in their own time. But nowhere in the movie did it ever show this at all. Not even after it was said. Not until this point. So again, it makes it seem like it just came out of left field.
Rachel, follow the memory. Keep going. Stop fighting. Let it flow. I killed Bakuna.
What?
And 2, it affects the timeline. Trying to figure it out, I am realizing I may be wrong with the whole 2 agencies thing. Even then, having watched the movie 3 times, I still can't figure it out. This scene worked in Kung Fu Panda 2 because it was a recurring thing in the movie. We see Po constantly battle these images until he finally lets it flow and we get the reveal. And I think that's the main issue why Argylle's reveals seem to not work. Because we were never really giving support for these reveals, that when the reveals are revealed, they seem so far-fetched or out of left field, which ruin the movie's momentum.
Tell me that's not true.
You tell me that's not true. Tell me that's not true!
It led me to ask myself, why was it done this way? My best guess is because if there were subtle indication or hints before the reveals, then it would ruin the reveal. But by doing so, they dug themselves in this pit which hurt both the movie's structure and story. But anyways, those are just my thoughts. Did you enjoy the movie? Let me know what you thought about it down below, and I'll see you in the next review. Until then, God bless.